Welcome to Followers of the Cross. This is your host, Jason Reynolds. This is the first of a series of podcasts featuring interviews with authors at the International Christian Retail Show. Topics range from preschool children's books to using your spiritual gifts. This episode features Timothy Mahoney, the filmmaker behind the documentary Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus. In that film, Mahoney demonstrated archaeological proof for the Exodus account in the Bible. He is preparing to release a sequel called Patterns of Evidence, Young Explorers. That film will show how a group of young people became involved in his archaeological adventures. The sound quality in the interview will be a little bit rough, if you will bear with me. The ICRS media room was full of journalists conducting their own interviews. Now to the program. With us today, we're talking about Patterns of Evidence, and there is an existing one out, and there's going to be another one in the summer called Young Explorers, based on, I believe, excavations that happened in Israel with some young people. Is that right?
Right. Basically, for your audience who might not have heard of Patterns of Evidence, is that Patterns of Evidence is it's a new film that came out in the last year or so that looks at, is the evidence for the Exodus, the story of the Exodus and the conquest, is there any physical evidence? And, Jason, there are a lot of people out there and universities that say the Bible is false. You've heard this before. I'm sure your audience has, and they're attacking the Bible because they say there's no evidence for this story of Moses and the Israelites leaving Egypt, or the story of Joshua and the conquest of Jericho. What Patterns of Evidence has done is it was a long 12-year journey for me as a filmmaker, starting to look for evidence of the Bible, because I grew up in a Christian home, but my father and mother divorced when I was young, and so my mother was a single parent, and she read to us the Bible. And she put an enormous amount of faith, and we did, in the fact that if God could save the Israelites, and if he could save Daniel out of the lion's den, if he could save Jonah and all these other stories, that he could save our family, from the challenges that we were facing. Yeah. And so when I grew up, people said, well, these stories aren't true. So I went, thinking that there wouldn't be any challenges, I went to look for the story of the Exodus in Egypt in 2001. And went with a film crew, and when I got to a particular place where the Israelites were supposed to have lived, they told me there was no evidence for this. And that was a point where it was like a crisis in my own faith. Yeah. And it led me to this 12-year journey where we started to say, well, what does the Bible say? And can we find evidence for it anywhere? Not in the places or the time that people suggested it would be, but is there any evidence? Because I was hearing from other Egyptologists and archaeologists that there wasn't evidence for the Bible, but many people weren't listening to them. And so I started to compile a lot of information and interviews. And it eventually became what has been a very successful film, documentary, that was in theaters around the nation, 650 theaters last, not this January, but the January before in 2015. Mm-hmm. And then it went into a lot of other types of distribution. It was in Walmart for a while. And right now you can purchase the film on our website, Patterns of Evidence, patternsofevidence.com, and you can also get it at Christian bookstores that carry it, which is where a lot of people shop. And we have also other products. We ended up making a book, which is called A Filmmaker's Journey, and that book includes the behind-the-scenes story, because I get interviews with people like Benjamin Netanyahu and Shimon Peres, and what happened leading up to those interviews for people that are interested. Yeah. And we know that the story of the Exodus is the story of the nation of Israel. And as I see this for your audience, that this question of Israel, God made a covenant with them at the mountain. He made one with Abraham and said that, you're going to have this nation. And he said, how could this be? I don't even have a son. Yeah. And so eventually these people become a nation, and they make a promise to God at Mount Sinai. And where we're at right now in the filmmaking process, because we have some exciting things to share with your audience. We are in the process now. We made this 2-hour film which affirms these stories of the Exodus and the conquest. And we are making more films right now, 7 more films. We're trying to raise the money for those. We have some raised, but we don't have it all. And these films are, which way did Moses and the Israelites go? It's going to cover the route of the Exodus. What are the seas, or what sea did they cross? What mountain did they go to? And what happened at that mountain that changed the history of the world? That's the next carrying on of patterns. But in the meantime, I realized that we had so much material that I ended up thinking, we should create an extended version, a box set. And so we created a 5-disc box set, which has patterns of evidence with, there's one disc that just has expanded evidence, like more information about the evidence, and some additional evidence that you haven't seen. Then the whole question of the Bible and archaeology, we dig deeper into why is it that people are resistant. They're not resistant to other books, but they're very resistant to the Bible being explored. So what is Bible archaeology? Why have so many archaeologists abandoned the Bible? Would Egypt ever record an Exodus in the first place? And is there a bias against the Bible's historical record? And so those are some of the topics that are in that. This expanded set has 57 videos in it. And then we have the impact and commentary, and that's where you're going to see interviews with Benjamin Netanyahu talking about the Exodus, Shimon Peres. We've got Michael Medved, people who enjoy Michael Medved. And we also have a panel with Anne Graham Lotz, Billy Graham's daughter, and Gretchen Carlson from Fox News is moderating the panel, and Dennis Prager is on it, as well as Eric Metaxas, the author of Bonhoeffer, and Father Jonathan Morris. And that was a panel discussion that's going to talk about this film. And a lot of people love that. It's great. There's also a pastor's guide to patterns of evidence, the Exodus. And speaking of pastors, we ended up realizing that churches didn't get to see it. They might want to have an event. So we have a new kit called a movie event kit. And it includes the rights to do this, as well as materials for tickets, for trailers, for social media. And we also have a training video. Comes with a training video, show you how do I have an event? I want to do this, and reach out. And then we also have as I'm thinking about it, we have a children's series. Last year, I was working on I had an Egyptologist over, and I took him to a school who was talking about the story of the Exodus. And I saw the kids were, in this particular case, they were so interested in the topic of Egypt. And I said, there's an opportunity here. And so I said, let's get together, and some young people, and we got them from about ages 8 to 15, and we tried a test. And I brought them all together in an old mansion, and with this Egyptologist, and we filmed a scene with him talking about the story of Joseph and his family and his father Jacob coming into this area. And what we found is it worked really, really well. And I thought, well, let's keep doing it. And what ended up happening is that we ended up creating a new series called Patterns of Evidence Young Explorers. And this series uses a lot of the research and the interviews and the archaeology of the old, the film that's more for adults, but it made it in a more of a youth version of it. And so there's 5 episodes. We're really excited. This is coming out at the end of the summer here.
The end of the summer?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you have children or grandchildren, this is probably at the age of 8, through 15 is probably the appropriate part of that. And we have 5 episodes, as I said. The first one's the adventure of Abraham's promise.
Okay.
What did God promise Abraham? And these kids go with me. There's hiking and there's rock climbing, and then there's then we take them into this place. I used what I call an exploration chamber, and that allows me to take them into the archaeology and into the world of the virtual reality of these places in the Bible. So the next episode after this is coming, The Search for the Amazing Rise of Joseph. So do you have children?
I have a teenager. We adopted him last year, and he'll be 16 here in just a few weeks.
Okay.
I have to remember that birthday.
Yeah. Well, young people today are being challenged with, is the Bible true? And I know that, there's I think that more than probably ever before in this country, at least, the question of does the Bible have any influence in our culture, or does it have any influence in our lives, and is it just one of many books? That is what's at stake. And the historical credibility of the Bible, I think, is really the big question that I am pursuing. And what I found in this first part of this journey is that there is evidence for the Bible. There is evidence for the Exodus. And there's a huge, powerful pattern of evidence. And so now we've been able to make these new films, and if people are interested in them, they can order them on our website too, patternsofevidence.com, where we have a variety of different. We also, if you like to read, we have this book that came out called A Filmmaker's Journey, Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus.
Okay.
And this is a 400. You can see we sell it by the pound here. You see, it's
This is a nice looking book. This looks like it would be a good gift book as well.
Yes.
Like at Christmas or
Yes,
for a birthday.
It is. Yep. And our company's called Thinking Man Films.
Okay.
And so we have, there's a verse in I think it's in Deuteronomy. It says that we shall love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our mind, and with all our soul, and all our strength. And this idea of loving the God with our minds, in other words, our faith is a historical faith. And right now people are saying that there's no history to it. And I think that's the reason why this is important at this time, is because there is a history here. The other faiths are based on somebody's vision or something.
Yeah.
This faith, our faith, is based upon the God of the Bible acting throughout history, intervening in the story of the Exodus and Joshua.
What was one of the most? Was there anything that was especially surprising among all the evidence that you found? Was there like one thing that just blew your mind, or you kind of weren't expecting?
That's a great question, and I'll give you three. How's that?
That's good.
Okay, three that stick out. One of them is this. One of them has to do with Joseph. There was underneath the city of Ramesses was another city, and that's where we believe the Exodus time period is. And in that city, they found, at the early part of that city, they found a palace and a special pyramid tomb. But the owner of that pyramid tomb was not an Egyptian. He was a Semitic person, and he had light-colored skin and reddish hair. Now, what's interesting about the reddish hair is, remember Jacob and Esau? Edom means reddish. So this was in the family line, this reddish hair and reddish complexion. And so what they found is that person, when they excavated his tomb, and he was a person of authority, and he had a throw stick, and he had a coat of color,
Oh.
Not only that,
Coat of color.
Yes, a multicolored coat. And but and there were other tombs around him, 11 other major tombs, and you know that Joseph had 11 brothers. And when they excavated this tomb, the bones were missing. And Joseph asked his brothers, "When I leave for Egypt, I want you to take my bones with you." And so here we have, in the very same place where they were said to have been, the very first people that come there are these type that would have been Jacob's family from the same type of area. And they have this non-Egyptian person as a ruler that builds a palace there. And if Joseph did that when he retired, that would have been fit what he would have been with his family. And the fact that when they excavated it, which is highly rare, I don't know if it ever happens, people don't steal bones, they steal jewelry.
Yeah.
And the bones were gone, matching exactly the story of the Genesis story of Joseph and his family. Now here's another one, was that when Jericho was uncovered, they